The airport was humming with its usual orchestra of rolling suitcases, faint announcements, and restless travelers. Among them stood a man who seemed out of place, not because of his clothes, but because of the quiet heaviness in his eyes. Jack Turner, a former Air Force pilot and single father, stood at the airline counter holding his ticket tightly in one hand and a worn-out backpack in the other. His left leg bore a slight limp, the legacy of a mission that had ended with more pain than medals. He wasn't dressed like most first-class passengers. No designer jacket or business briefcase. Just a plain navy sweatshirt and a photograph of his daughter tucked into his wallet. He'd spent the last 3 years fighting a different kind of battle, the one that comes after war. Raising his 8-year-old daughter Lily alone after his wife's passing had been harder than anything he'd faced in uniform. And this flight from Dallas to New York wasn't just another trip, it was the beginning of a new chapter. He was headed to an interview that could finally give him the stability and peace his daughter deserved. But fate had other plans for how his day would unfold. "Sir, there's been a mistake," the flight attendant said softly, looking at his boarding pass. "Your seat was given to another passenger. First class is full." Jack blinked, trying to process, "But I paid for that seat weeks ago. I even called to confirm yesterday." "I'm very sorry, sir," she replied, clearly uncomfortable. "You've been reassigned to economy. It's a full flight, so there's not much we can do." Before Jack could respond, a tall man in a sharp gray suit brushed past him, flashing his ticket with a smug smile. "Guess I got lucky," the businessman chuckled, sliding into the priority boarding line. Jack's jaw tightened, but he didn't argue. He'd seen enough arrogance in his life to know it wasn't worth the energy. He nodded silently, gathered his things, and limped toward the back of the line. If you believe stories like this deserve to be told, stories that remind us of quiet heroes among us, don't forget to like this video, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to Soul Spark for more cinematic, heartfelt storytelling. The flight was already boarding. Jack took his cramped seat near the middle of the plane, the kind that barely reclines and makes you feel smaller with every minute. A mother with a crying baby sat beside him, and across the aisle, a teenage boy was loudly complaining about the Wi-Fi speed. Jack smiled faintly, his patience weathered by years of harder environments than this. He closed his eyes and pictured Lily's face, the gap in her front teeth, her laugh that could light up a room. Minutes later, the pilot's voice echoed through the cabin, announcing a smooth flight ahead. The plane roared to life, climbing above the clouds, the city below shrinking into a grid of twinkling lights. Jack exhaled, relaxing into his seat for the first time in days. But then something shifted. About 12 minutes into the flight, a faint vibration pulsed through the floor. At first, most passengers didn't notice. Jack did. His instincts, honed by years in the cockpit, felt something was off. He glanced out the window and noticed a thin trail of smoke curling from the left engine. His heart kicked into overdrive. That wasn't normal. He pressed the attendant call button, his tone calm but urgent. "Excuse me, ma'am. I need you to tell the pilot there might be a mechanical issue with engine 2. It's losing output pressure." The young flight attendant blinked confused. "Sir, everything looks fine. Please," he interrupted gently but firmly, locking eyes with her. "Trust me on this." A few moments later, the plane jolted violently, and passengers screamed. Oxygen masks dropped from the ceiling. The baby beside him wailed as the mother clutched her seat. The cabin lights flickered. Jack could feel the tilt in the aircraft. It was banking hard, too hard. The captain's voice came over the intercom, shaky but composed. "Ladies and gentlemen, we're experiencing a temporary engine failure. Please remain calm and follow crew instructions." But Jack knew temporary didn't mean safe. He could hear the engine sputtering, see the wings shuddering from his window. He unbuckled his belt and moved with steady precision toward the crew area. "Sir, you need to sit down," another attendant shouted. "I'm a former Air Force pilot," Jack said quickly. "If you want to keep this plane level, I need to talk to your captain now." The attendant hesitated, fear in her eyes, before finally nodding. Within seconds, Jack was ushered into the cockpit. The pilot, a young man barely in his 30s, was struggling with the controls, panic setting in. "Engine 2's out," he said, sweat dripping down his forehead. "We're losing altitude fast." Jack scanned the instruments, his muscle memory kicking in like second nature. "You're pulling too hard on the yoke. You'll stall the left side. Let me take co-control. The pilot hesitated. Sir, I can't just. Do you want to save these people or not? Jack barked, his tone cutting through the chaos. That was enough. The pilot stepped aside and Jack's hands gripped the controls. Years of training flooded back. The vibration, the tilt, the pressure readings, it all spoke to him like an old language he hadn't forgotten. Feather the left prop, balance the pitch to 5 degrees. Trust me, Jack instructed. The pilot followed his lead. Gradually the nose leveled. The terrifying shake began to subside. Mayday, mayday, this is flight 237. We've lost an engine and are stabilizing at 20,000 feet. Jack radioed to air traffic control. His voice was calm, almost eerily so. Back in the cabin, fear had turned to silent prayer. Mothers held their children close. Strangers gripped hands. The businessman from first class, the one who'd taken Jack's seat, sat pale-faced, his expensive watch trembling on his wrist. Minutes felt like hours. The right engine began to sputter too. The plane was heavy, struggling to maintain lift. Jack's mind raced through options. We can't make the nearest airport, he said. We'll have to do an emergency water landing. The pilot froze. Water landing. Are you serious? Jack nodded. I've done it before. But you need to trust me completely. As the coastline came into view, Jack began the descent. He guided the aircraft with surgical precision, adjusting every detail, the speed, the angle, the flap position. Below, the passengers braced, tears streaming, whispers of please and God filling the air. Brace! Brace! Came the command. The impact was thunderous. Water exploded around the fuselage. Screams echoed, and then silence. The plane had hit the surface but hadn't broken apart. They were alive. The emergency doors opened. Freezing water rushed in. Panic erupted, but Jack moved with unshakable composure. Everyone stay calm! Move to the rafts now! He helped the mother with the baby first, then an elderly man who'd fainted, then passengers too terrified to move. Even as the water climbed to his waist, Jack refused to leave. He went row by row, ensuring every single person was out. When he finally reached the exit, soaked and shaking, he heard a faint voice behind him. The businessman, the same man who'd taken his seat, was trapped, his leg pinned by debris. Jack didn't hesitate. He dove back in, pried the man free, and dragged him towards safety. Minutes later, rescue helicopters arrived. Every passenger survived, every single one. Hours after the ordeal, Jack sat on the shore, a blanket draped around him, staring into the horizon. The businessman approached slowly, his face pale but filled with guilt. You saved my life, he said quietly. And I took your seat. Jack looked up, exhaustion softening his eyes. Sates don't matter, he said. People do. That line, overheard by reporters nearby, would echo across news outlets for weeks. The story of the veteran who saved Flight 237 became a headline, but for Jack, it was never about fame. When he reunited with Lily days later, she ran into his arms, tears streaming down her cheeks. You're my hero, Daddy, she whispered. He smiled, hugging her tighter. No, sweetheart, I'm just someone who got another chance to come home. If this story moved you, remember to hit the like button, share it with someone who needs a reminder of courage and kindness, and subscribe to Soul Spark for more powerful, true to life stories that touch the heart. And as the sun dipped below the horizon, Jack looked toward the sky, toward the same clouds he once flew through, and whispered a quiet prayer of gratitude. Not for the applause, not for the headlines, but for the simple, irreplaceable gift of being alive and being needed. Because sometimes, the seat you lose isn't a loss at all. It's destiny's way of putting you exactly where you're meant to be.